of you lovely aspirants. I hope you guys are doing well and that your preparation's going on track. With all things happening simultaneously, with in fact so many things happening simultaneously, the one thing that always takes sidestep or the one thing that always goes unnoticed is the preparation for the examination. And somehow it's just very convenient. It's convenient to postpone it. But the one thing that you also have to understand, or let's say the elephant in the room, is that there cannot be any career, there cannot be any college unless there is a proper preparation in place. And with that, I, Suyukti Seth, a verbal and a critical reasoning mentor here at Legal Edge, is here to be able to help guide you and to be able to help you know your paper very well, because the first thing to any preparation is knowing what the paper holds for us. So I will be decoding the NLSAT paper for you, the requirements, the approach, the question stems, what are the kind of things that you need to keep in mind, how should you begin with the reading, the approach, the psyche, and all things around it, so that by the end of this YT, you at least have a sweet flavor of what your preparation should be. And that you would no more be dodging all around, everywhere, knowing what to do and what not. So take this video as a to-do. If you are somebody who is preparing for the NLSAT examination, this is a must watch. Now, there'll be a lot of information in here which you might already know of. It might not be that I'm giving out, I'm expending anything which is a very novel information, but sometimes what also becomes important is that it is said, right? कब बोलते हैं ना हिंदी में जैसे कि कभी कभी बस किसी का बोल देना जरूरी होता है for us to be able to reinforce that idea, and that is essentially what I shall be doing today. So I'm not going to be giving you anything which is wildly informative. You know the trick. You've been in the business, you've already been preparing for it, so it's not that I will speak some rocket science today. But yes, I will put it out there so that you know what needs to be done, and from there can be no escape. So with that, let us begin with what we have. It is the NLSAT 2026, How to Ace the Critical Reasoning and the RC. So we are going to be talking about mastering the RC genres, the deconstruction, that is how should the approach of it all together be, and the critical reasoning question stems. Now, the one thing that we do know of the fact is that the paper in entirety tends to be asking 81 questions in total, out of which the first section, that is section A, has 75 questions. Now, in the 75 questions, there is something very crazy that is happening. And that is, you have a +1 for every time you do a correct answer, but you have a 0.25 of a negative marking for not only a wrong answer, but also for an unattempted answer. Now, this is a doozy. This is new. While when you don't attempt onto something, it's just a safe bet. But NLSAT does not want to have your road that easy, which means what they've done is, if in case you don't mark an answer, you lose there as well. So might as well lose with a guess, right? So gone were the days wherein the ones that we weren't very confident of could have been the ones, that we would have let those slip. But then this is not happening anymore. So that's the first thing. So not doing is not an option now, which means we have to do. And now that we're doing, might as well be absolutely confident of what is it that we are going to be doing. Now, very quickly, let's take a peekaboo into the pattern and what exactly are the types of genres that are most popularly asked. Now, the exam format is a 150-minute paper with a 150 question. So it's 150 for 150. It is going to be in an offline mode. Like I said, there are going to be two parts to it. There's going to be a descriptive part, which is called the part B, and then there is a part A, which is called the MCQ part. But the MCQ part is going to have 75 questions, all of which are going to go very heavy on reading comprehensions. But the question stems in the reading comprehensions are categorically going to be intertwined with 3 topics, which are going to be your English, your GK, and your critical reasoning. So unlike the other examinations wherein there are different sections, there are segregated sections for each of it, NLSAT does not do that. So they're going to go very crazy. They're going to go very heavy duty onto the reading comprehension, which of course the undercurrent of it clearly says that you have to be somebody who is very comprehensive, somebody who is a pro with the reading comprehension. So we'll get to that, of course. And within the questions, you will have a mixture of all of these questions. You then have a part B, which is going to have essay and, of course, the short question type. Now, it will be only evaluated if you are able to qualify the first part of it. The kind of genres that you must expect in the reading comprehensions are going to have politics in it. There's going to be legal essays, there's philosophy, there's literature, there's social commentary, there's economics. Is it going to be limited to this? No. Is it going to be popularly inundated with these? Yes. So that is how we understand that these are going to be the popular genres that we have. Now, the core skill that you must have for a reading comprehension per se is to be able to know how to spot the thesis. That is, to be able to know upon reading how can you condense that information so that you're able to extract what the main idea of the passage is, to be able to understand the organization of the passage, because a lot of times if you're doing a critical reasoning question, you will have to have a clear distinction of which of the following is going to be the argument and which of the following is going to be the premise for it, and of course the tone. So you have to be somebody who has to have a very good hang of all three of these skills. Only then will you be able to approach the reading comprehension with absolute clarity. And of course, the confidence comes with it. Because if there's even a tad bit of shyness with either of these skills, then it is going to reflect upon how we approach the passage, and ultimately it is going to show up in the marks. Now, beginning with each of the passage and what exactly are the expectations of the particular genres that we have. Now, since you're preparing for the NLSAT, you have to understand, and in fact, needless to say, you know that reading is a sine qua non of the preparation. A sine qua non basically means an indispensable part. And since the reading is going to be very heavy, which means there's going to be a lot of back-to-back reading, which means what you also need to be having is what we call the reading stamina. So while you could be somebody who is very good at reading, you will have to be the kind of person who is able to read at a stretch without being distracted. Now, that is not any person's play. This is only something that can be done by people who are very equipped, people who are very skilled, and people who are very thorough with the practice of the reading comprehension. Now, the best part of the paper is that reading comprehension is not a new thing for us. Forever, in all of the competitive examinations or the school examinations also for that matter, we have always been doing what we call the unseen passages. So a more fancier, a more, let's put it, a more professional terminology of the unseen passage is what we call the reading comprehension. As you see the name reading comprehension, which is an RC, the first word reading and the other is comprehension, essentially tries to understand two basic skills whether the aspirant possesses or not. The first is, of course, the reading. And from the reading, I also want to understand, is it just empty reading that you do, or are you also able to comprehend what you read? Which is why we have questions. And the way you answer the question becomes the parameter for me to be able to know how well have you been able to understand the passage. Now, the reason why the entire pattern has gone so heavy onto reading comprehension is because you guys are going to get into a fraternity where it is all about reading period. So without the reading, there is no moving further. If you've ever seen a lawyer's chamber or a judge's chamber or whatever it is that you aspire, law and reading go hand in glove. They are not distinct, they are in fact one. So as a prospective lawyer or as somebody who's trying to make a career in the legal fraternity, you have to know that you're going to be taking reading to your grave. And since reading is so important, which is why the paper pattern also tends to only be seeking two abilities or two capabilities, let me put it like that, from the aspirant. That is, क्या आप read कर सकते हो और क्या आप समझ सकते हो. Because बाकी जो भी tricks and trades है industry के वो तो आपको सिखा दिए जाएंगे. But these are going to be two essentials, two bare minimums that are non-negotiable, and that they want you to carry this every time you're going to be coming in for the, for whatever qualification it is. Which is why reading comprehensions have suddenly become so busy, and busy as in the most asked. And they've actually become very busy because nowadays, whatever be the kind of entrance examination that we see, all of the examinations have really gone bazooka onto these. So that's how popular and that's how important this question act is altogether. Now, when we tend to be doing reading, the first thing that you have to do is begin with extensive reading. Now, when you begin with extensive reading, very soon you will have to begin with what we call eclectic reading. So eclectic basically means diversified. Now, when you start onto your reading, you have to know that you can't just be reading the same content every day in and out. The reason why you don't do that is because the mind understands and responds to the information once it begins to get familiar. But then there will always be these uncharted territories that you might not know of. And if you don't read those, you will never familiarize, you will never acquaint yourself with what the information in those genres seem to carry. And if ever you get a passage in the paper, you will be struck by surprise because you wouldn't know what the passage is trying to say. Which is why पहले तो हमें रीडिंग करनी है और फिर हमें रीडिंग एक्सटेंसिवली करनी है. We have to go far and beyond, both in length and breadth when it comes to reading. Since we have been able to decode, at least handpick, which of the following are the most popular genres that we have with respect to reading, which is why we will try very quickly and understand what exactly are the requirements of these specific genres and where are the kinds of things we must pay all of our attention to. So where exactly does the spotlight go? Beginning with the first. One of the most popular lots that are generally asked or generally given are always the legal themed passages. So you're going to see that the background information and all around the RC is going to be legal in nature. Now, legal passages essentially are dense, technical, and formal. So the kind of language is not going to be colloquial. It is going to be very formal. They're going to be very dense in terms of there's going to be a lot of section, there's going to be a lot of numbers, so there's going to be a lot of analytical and statistical data that's going to be given out. And then it's going to be very technical. Technical as in there's going to be some principle or there's going to be some law for which you will have to understand what the application or the implementation of it is going to be. So there's going to be consequence which you might have to anticipate. So that is what is meant by the technical aspect of it. So these are going to be workable passages wherein you will have to be able to work the kind of, the kind of idea that has been talked about in the passage. The kind of strategies that you must have on your fingertips, beginning with split complex sentences into simpler meanings. Now for this, you will have to make sure that a proper understanding of the legal vernacular is something that you have. Legal linguistics or legal jargons are different from what we talk in normal days. So your core legal knowledge has to be on point for you to be able to know what these complex sentences mean and how is it that you can break them down into simpler sentences. Because only when you have simpler information does it become easier for the mind to, of course, respond. Highlight the key legal terms and definitions. Again, these jargons and their meaning has to be something that you should know of. Because when something has been titled and given and we don't know what it means, it's very difficult for us to know what the passage is trying to mean. Unlike in English, wherein contextually you can pull out what the meaning of the word is, that can't happen in legal. So knowing the definitions is going to be something that will be very important. We will have to know how to track the argument flow. That is from the premise to the conclusion. Now, if it is a legal passage, you're going to see that towards the end, maybe there is some sort of, so for example, there could be some sort of acquittal or there could be some sort of conviction. So there's going to be a proper organization wherein there is going to be a narrative or there's going to be chronological layout of information. So you will have to know what the transition of the passage is. And if we don't respect the transition, it's likely that we might just muddle up with the information. And any jumbled up information is wrong information in terms of being able to exemplify what the passage is all about. Don't fear the jargons. Like I said, focus on the author's argument and stance. In case you don't know what the word is likely to mean, because it's very likely. It's not that we know everything. We don't have an encyclopedia fit. So for us to be able to know what it is, try and understand the context and try and extract what the meaning of it is going to be. One pro tip, conclusions generally appear in the final lines because legal passages are, they have a paradigm to itself. That is, that organization is, there's going to be a start, that's an intro, and then a body and a conclusion. So mostly you will be able to find what is it trying to be talking about within the conclusive lines itself. But again, having a good knowledge of the legal fraternity, of how things are, how the talks within the legal sphere is being done becomes very important and something that you should know because legal passages are quite rampant and quite popular. Getting on to the next. Philosophical or abstract passages. Now, abstract passages again are going to be the kind of passages which might either be revolving around ethics, morality, or they're just going to be the kind of subjects which will talk about things that are going to be around aesthetic, around beauty, things that are intangible in nature, basically. That is what is meant by abstract. Now, whenever we have a philosophical or an abstract passage, please understand, guys, they are mostly conceptual, nuanced, and open ended because these are what we call subjective passages. Subjective means these are going to be opinionated, very heavy on opinion, in fact, and they're going to be something which have been told by the author and what the author feels about the topic. Which means it's very likely that what another person might feel on that topic is different from what the author is trying to say. And they're going to be very nuanced. That is, a lot of attention to detail is what becomes over here. So we have to be somebody who knows how to magnify on every bit of information that has been provided. The approach for doing such passages is we need to identify the theme as to what sort of a theme is it being talking about. Justice, art, ethics, morality, however it is. Always know what the tone of the passage is so that it helps assist you find whatever the main idea is or to be able to travel with what the information is. So are we being skeptical about something? Are we being hopeful, critical, or neutral? Or it could of course be. So we need to end it with an etc. Watch for the qualifiers since these are subjective, which is why there will be a lot of subjective connectivities which are going to be used. So starting with perhaps, generally, often. So these are all what? These are all going to be logical connectives that are going to be there because they want to talk about what the author's opinion around it are. So these words are going to be very important because they are the one which are going to establish what exactly is the author's opinion in the end. Track the structure. Begin with the thesis, example, and contrast. So most of the times these are also contradictory. These are paradoxical topics because when we talk about what the author feels, there will always be some sort of, there's always going to be some sort of reciprocation to it, which will be mostly contradictory in nature. So you'll have to know what that plot is also so that ultimately you're able to bind the idea together and you know कि हाँ भाई इस चीज पे बात कर रहा है. The focus should be on the author's purpose and the implied beliefs. So there's going to be a lot of inferential language that you can expect whenever there's an abstract passage because they try to say, but whenever there is a beauty, right? So whenever there is something that is an abstract idea like beauty or morality, so while a lot of it has been said, there is so much that goes in an indirect way also. A lot of information is insinuated, it is hinted, directly nahi boli jati hai. So we have to be somebody who should be able to we need to have the hawk's eye to be able to find what is it that the author seems to be implying about. So these are what are going to be the contents that you can find mostly in a philosophical passage. Getting on to the next, the current affairs and the social issue passages. Now these are generally easier than the other ones because GK plays a very important role here and our familiarity of knowing the information helps us fasten our read in these passages. So these are mostly going to be editorial style, which are going to be backed by a lot of data and example. And this is going to be, like I said, the relatedness to the passage will be quite tight. Now, what are the kinds of things you need to do? You need to find the main claim, which is going to be mostly in the opening and the closing line, because if it is an editorial based passage, there will be something which the author is trying to say. Because there's going to be some sort of persuasion or dissuasion, which we have to be finding out. We have to note the supporting evidence and the counter arguments that are going to be given, right? What are the evidence that support an idea and what are going to be the counter arguments that we have? The contextual familiarity helps. That is, if you know the words and if you keep reading the editorial, something that is of course a given. We know that that has to be done on daily basis. So अगर आप पढ़ रहे हो तो obviously, like I said, news की familiarity takes us really far. Where should our questions focus be? On inference, cause, effect, and the author's stance. What exactly is it that the author's opinion is about the entire thing? So of the lot until now, these are always going to be the easiest. And from these, the maximum number of GK questions are going to be there. So this is how they tie up the GK as well. Right now in philosophy and abstract, you can't expect so much of GK. So the CR in the English becomes heavy. But as in when the genre keeps changing, we know that what is it that one can expect out of the lot. The next are literature and again abstract passages. Let's just focus on the literature bit of it. Now, literature can take into account both fiction or non-fiction, or it could just be anything which is going to be around literary content. Now, please expect passages which are going to be literary, reflective, often metaphorical, because that's what literature is. Be it literature, be it philosophy, be it psychology, there's a lot of symbolism that goes with it. So it's just not what is written. There is so much meaning, there is so much depth to it, there's so much profoundness to the information, and that's going to be something which should be within our measure. Only then do we understand what is it that the passage seems to be talking about. Some tips that can help you. Spot the symbolism and the allegory. The allegory is going to be the kind of moralistic connection that is being made. General ideas are behind anecdotes. So if the passages used a lot of anecdotes that are personal experiences of the author, try and understand what is he implying from those. Track the voice, the narrator versus the analyst. Understand if the passage is in a first person, second person, or third person narration. It really helps because it helps us know who has been experiencing all of this. Summarize paras quickly. Okay, one, now this can be a standard technique if reading is not your friend, or if comprehension is something that seems to be fading, right? So if you are somebody who seems to be the kind of person who's not very quick onto being able to remember or being able to condense the information, shrink the information, then for every one paragraph that you read, summarize the idea quickly in your mind. And then ultimately, what are you to do? All the summaries that you've made of the paragraph, just get it all together, and there is where you have the main idea. Use para opens, close lines for main transition. The paragraph first line and last line can be the main transitions, because whenever it's literature, it will always follow those norms wherein once the paragraph is over, the idea is taken care of, and then we move forward to the next. Extract underlying arguments beyond the flowery text. While everything is going to be very beautifully written, it's going to be ornamented, very embellished text, but there is going to be a lot more that they're trying to say beyond that. So look through the passage is what is going to be required from you guys. Next, the deconstruction technique. So these were the most popularly asked. Does it simply rest onto these? No. But these can be how your approach needs to change passage per passage, right? Now let's talk a little about what the deconstruction technique of the passages is generally supposed to be. So how do you dissect any of the RC passages? Beginning with active reading, the most. You have to be somebody who is an engaged participant. You are somebody who is just not reading superficially, but somebody who is equally participative with what exactly is it happening. So how do you do that? Have an imagery going on in the mind of whatever seems to be happening. So pause after each para, just plus roll. Whenever you have employed all of your senses, that is, you've also put your hand to use, the brain does not distract here and there. तो दीवार में लगी हुई चिपकली इतनी ज्यादा entertaining नहीं लगती जितना लगता है कि passage के बारे में पढ़ ले. So stop at every paragraph, write the role of it, the gist of it, what do you think it means? The annotation. It's very important that you mark all transitions, however, therefore, or whatever be the connectors, perhaps, certainly, often, because these are your giveaways. These are the words that are going to tell you where the transition of the word has happened. Argument mapping. The premise and the conclusion. You have to know that whatever be the paragraph, while you have done the English bit to it, there will also have to be a CR based exercise that you have to do alongside it. So you have to be very clear with what the opinion is, that is whatever the argument of the author is, and what exactly is it that the question or the premise is going to be all about. Question driven reading, glance at questions, read for structure, scan for answers. It's always a good idea to read the questions first and then move on to the passage, especially if your passage is heavy on all the three fronts, that is GK, English and CR, because GK are going to be the kind of question that you can answer right away, right? अब बचा हमारे पास इंग्लिश और सीआर. Once you know what sort of questions do you have, you know where exactly in the passage should you lay emphasis to, something that becomes very important. At the end of the day, is there any shortcut to reading? No. The more you do, the better you get. Now, a little about also the CR question stems and what is it that we must expect. While there'll be a lot of videos that we are going to do wherein हम लोग हर एक question को decode करके extensive practice भी करेंगे ताकि आपको पता रहे, but at least एक overview तो पता होना चाहिए कि what exactly is it that you need to know. Now, when it comes to CR, it is all about the author's opinion. And when you have specific questions, you need to know what the requirement of the question is. Let's begin with the first, which are the most popular again, the assumption questions. The word assumption comes from the word assume, which means what are we to do? We are to automatically take into account the kind of information that the author has taken for granted. So what is the one thing that he's already assumed, taken for granted, and which is why he's written the passage? So always remember, assumptions are one step before the passage. It's going to be the kind of information that he has assumed, he agrees to be true. So now, what is the definition of an assumption? It is the unstated link between the premise and the conclusion. So he's written something and he's concluded. So there's going to be this one piece of information that he's taken for granted, because of which he's written the passage and been able to conclude. So it's that one missing jigsaw which you have to think. Assumptions will always be done from the author's point of view, not from your point of view, please remember. So what is the approach to be able to identify assumptions? Identify the conclusion and the evidence that you have. Ask what must be true for this to work. So if the conclusion is true, what must be the kind of information that the author must have taken for granted? Because only if he agrees to that will this conclusion be true. Correct answer will be bridging the conclusion to the assumption. That is what the assumption technique is generally. Keywords are assume, requires, presupposes. So these are how the question stems can be. So which of the following can be assumed, presupposed, or which of the following requires the author to. So if that's how the construction is, you know that it is definitely an assumption question stem. Moving on to the next question stem, inference. The word inference comes from the word infer, which means from the said about the unsaid. Inferences, unlike assumption, are not the kind of information which the author has taken for granted, but is the kind of information which the author doesn't have to say out loud, but with what has been said, it is the kind of information that one can imply. So inferences are 100% information deduction from the passage, which means an inference will always be incidental piece of information, which means that incident will have a mention in the passage. So what exactly is an inference? An answer is 100% supported by the passage. How do you identify your inferences? Beginning with, you always stay within the scope, right? Because it is from the said about the unsaid. So the said has to be in the passage. No outside knowledge. Paraphrase each option, check for the guaranteed truth. So if you feel that, okay, there are two options that seem to be correct, go back to the passage and testify. It is a short technique for you to know if it's been said or not. Beware of absolutes. Explicits don't work. So words like never, always, only, every, each, all. So these are red flags. These can be some easy giveaways for you to know that it's not likely to be an answer. Is it 100% not the answer? That's not what I'm saying. Likely. Right? The way the questions are going to be articulated are going to be inferred, most supported, which of the following can be concluded from the passage. The next question stems are again the most favorite of the CR fraternity. They are the strengthen and the weaken. As the name suggests, a strengthen option is a +1, a weaken option is a -1. Now for a strengthen idea, all what we have to do is we have to identify the opinion of the author and simply add on to it. So if the author says that today is a good day, I will simply say, yes, it is a good day. Now we'll try and use all external ideas or all external examples to further strengthen the idea that it is a good day. Strengthen and weaken are the only two question stems wherein outside knowledge is allowed. Why? Because unless and until we don't add outside knowledge, we will never be able to do what the requirement of the question is. For a weekend, please understand, we simply have to make sure or we have to ensure that the author is not coming to a conclusion. Does that mean that we have to be in defiance of the author and just defeat him altogether? No. Being at loggerhead is also weakening the stance altogether, which is why it says a -1. So if I say let's go for a movie, for you to be able to weaken my idea, it is going to be let's not go for a movie. So now I'm going to, or you're going to put in all of the views as to why we should, and I'm going to give you all of the views as to why we should not. If neither of us are coming to a conclusion, our stance is weakened. So a strengthen is always going to add a fact. It is going to bridge the gap or support the assumption, because it's going to be the one thing which the author has taken for granted, and you've also taken that for granted, which is why you are furthering that idea. A weaken is going to introduce a counter example or an alternative explanation. So this is not just the way, there can be another way to do this. So while we have a contest to the opinion, it becomes a weakening of the idea. Now, the best way to do it is mentally insert answers. Does conclusion become a stronger or weaker? So the moment you have an option, just put it onto the conclusion and see, अच्छा ये करेंगे तो हमारा जो conclusion है वो क्या हो रहा है? क्या वो strengthen हो रहा है? क्या वो weaken हो रहा है? That could be one of your easiest ways to be able to know if it is correct or not. Words are going to be strengthen, support, undermine, calls into question, etc. So there are of course a lot many. The next is a flaw question or a logical fallacy. Now all what we have to do is we have to find the error in the reasoning. Now flaws are typically 13 in nature. So for this, yes, a slight bit of your knowledge of the flaws is going to be important, but a flaw basically means that there has been something which the author has overlooked. And he has rested his conclusion based on whatever he supposed to be correct. So now we have to find what is the one thing which could have, been very subjective to author, but when put to practice, it is not a proper game plan, which means there is something which is missing, something which seems to not be working right. Now, some common flaws. So basically, what do we have to do? We have to find a reasoning error. Some common flaws are correlation is not equal to causation, overgeneralization, unstated assumptions, and like I said, there are 13 in number. We need to be knowing of all of them. Very soon, we are going to be doing a theory around it so that you know what all of these are going to be. But flaws are very typical in their approach. That is, you have to know what the flaws are. So, say for example, overgeneralization. It is the kind of flaw wherein you take one and then you make a very generalized experience about everything. So, if I say that if I like this movie, everybody's going to like this movie. But that's not possible. That's wrong. How can I be somebody who's judging for the other person as well? So this is an overgeneralization. I overgeneralize. Now, whatever is the kind of remedy for overgeneralization is what will be in the option. So flaw doesn't work like that. Flaw is a little tied. It's stitched together with the theory, and it is very important that we do know of the theory. Anyways, the keywords are going to be error, flawed, vulnerable to criticism. Make sure that you are able to find out what the exact logical gap is all about. The next is a conclusion question stem. Now these can be both either English based or CR based. So now conclusion are going to be the one information that we can 100% with guarantee now conclude with whatever has happened in the passage. Look for your markers, therefore, thus, hence, helps. Restate conclusion in your own words so that you know what you're looking for. So once you've read the passage, you should be first having a skeletal structure of what you want in the answer, and then see which of the following most closely resonates to that answer that you want. Eliminate premise or details disguised as answer. So there will always be traps. You have to know why an answer is not going to qualify and why it is a trap. If stuck, cross out premises. What's left is the main conclusion. So cross out all of the things. Whatever should remain in the option should be the conclusion that you have thought of. So that is one of the best ways to be able to know what conclusions are going to be. The next is a paradox or resolve the question type. So now in a paradox, what happens is there are contradictory situations. That is, the same person cannot be doing the two things that have been mentioned. And resolve simply means we also have to go and settle that situation. So for example, if I say, if I'm here doing a YT for you guys, I cannot be in the class. But it is so that the information says I'm doing a YT and I'm also there. Which means if you are to resolve, what are you to say? This could have been recorded. That is why I am in the class there. So in reasoning, we never ever go about by saying, nahi, usne to jhoot bola. This is not allowed. You just have to give a properly reasoned, a good backing as to why, a proper justification. So now there are going to be two conflicting facts. We need to reconcile the information. So if I say I hate ice cream, what was I doing at the ice cream truck? Now, reconcile this, which simply means I will have to give a proper reasoning as to why I was there. So maybe I was picking up an ice cream for somebody else. That's how we reconcile situations. Spot the paradox, predict the resolution, and the correct answer is going to explain both sides, which means, like I said, ये नहीं होगा कि एक side गलत है, दूसरा side. I hate ice cream, फिर भी मैं वहाँ पे थी. दोनों तरफ से मैंने explanation दे दिया, which is I was picking it for somebody else. The keywords are paradox, explain, reconcile, and resolve. So these are the articulations in which you might be able to find the questions. Now, when it comes to, so these were our questions with respect to CR. Getting on to the last leg of today's YT, which is going to also be around which of the following topics should you expect the questions from. So when it comes to GK or current affairs in the RC sets, please understand they're integrated with the RC base. That is something that we know. So mostly GK is going to be something that you should be able to spot and answer right there and there. But the focus areas need to be international and national current affairs, legal development, Supreme Court judgment, socio-political and social economic happenings, government policies, bills and committees, global affairs, your UN, your WTO, your climate and the conflicts. How should the approach be? Read the newspapers, the editorials on daily basis, especially the Hindu, if not the Hindu, the Indian Express. These, like I said, are non-negotiables. You have to be doing this. Monthly GK digest is very important. You have all of these marathons happening and there's so much information everywhere. Practice passage-based GK questions, not one-liner fact recall. It's different when you do it in an RC format, right? Because sometimes the information is inferred. So you have to be careful and you have to know what the question or the exam pattern requires. And GK and RC, it is a text of context, application, and not just memory. One-liner GKs are all about memory, but when it comes in the RC, it's a lot more than that. Now, the practice strategy, how should it be? It's going to be an inculcation of your habit, which should include practice and mock. If you see, the topic that we have today is how to ace RC and CR. The first step to acing is always knowing what your paper is all about. And there is when you come to practice. So getting on to the last leg, like I said, what should our strategy be? It's all about our habits, the mock, and the balance that we make. The first thing, you need to be a heavy reader. So your reading habit has to be of the editorial, wherein you're going to watch your speed and also the GK aspect of it. Not only this, you will also be doing some article reading. Where would you want to do the article reading? From sites like Aeon, Longform, Long Read, The Quint, The Wire, Project Syndicate, etc. So you can always begin with these and then further keep changing. Mock, please start. So don't wait that I'm going to be doing all the mocks before the examination. No, there are a lot of externalities that you have to also learn. The kind of things that only mocks can train you for. So 1 week, one mock a week, just ramp it up, attempts, and then ultimately get to 10 to 15 full mocks later on. The analysis, it's very important that after doing the mocks, if the mock has taken you 150 minutes, your analysis should take you 170 minutes. Maintain an error log, have a mention of every question that goes wrong, why, what was the intent, what was the approach, all things around it. So you cannot leave or bypass any bit of it. You have to make a mention of whether it was careless or was it conceptual in nature. Keep tracking your RC and your CR log. Please focus the weak areas, question stem, genre, approach, reading, what exactly is the problem, and give it a week-wise dedication. So if you want to begin with reading, 1 week to just reading. Here you're not going to bother about the accuracy. Then maybe the next time you're bracing onto the English front, then make sure your accuracy comes in. So it's always the habit of including an act and then making sure that you're able to perform on that activity altogether. Make sure that you're doing a balanced activity. Don't go heavy on just RC or just CR or just GK, because all of your 75 questions is a marriage of all of these topics. So my suggestion is you can do 25 of RC, 25 of CR, so that there is an equal practice and that your status quo is never shaken. Routine, daily, weekly mix of 4 to 5 RCs, 5 CR sets, and CA reading. So all of this becomes a daily practice. All of this into 7 can be a weekly practice. Keep one day which can be your leisure, but otherwise this is important. All of these things done together with discipline, sincerity, commitment, and dedication is what is going to get you through. These examinations, guys, are very heavy duty and they take a lot of toll on us, both emotionally and physically, which is why an early start is always a good start, or a properly charted out manner of approaching is always the right way. So the best way to get better in something is to start slow and then eventually get the momentum going. And then is when you can go all out for it. But don't do it in the initial go, because there will be burnouts, and burnouts are not a very good idea for the mind. And with that, I come to an end. Thank you so much for giving me your valuable time. I know this has gone longer than expected, but it was important that you understand what the paper requires, because you can't ace something unless and until you don't know it in and out. So this was my attempt to be able to tell you every fragment, every iota, every figment of what those 75 questions are going to look like. Make sure that you're beginning with your practice, and I've also stressed enough on how important reading is. And of course, that is the one thing that will take you. So if reading and comprehension power is on point, 80% of your preparation is already taken care of. The other 20% is all about your practice. So please make sure you have your head in the game. I'm going to keep seeing you every week with one or another strategy video. And we'll talk a lot about mocks and analysis and error logging and everything and anything that seems to be troubling you, but get a start. Thank you so much once again for giving me your valuable time. I shall be signing off now, but I'm going to see you guys very soon. If you like the video, please do hit the like button. Share it with other like-minded friends who are also in the same boat, struggling to know what exactly or where do we begin the preparation from. And please do write in the comment box if there be any specific strategy video that you want me to come up with, and I shall be very glad to be able to do that. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you once again.